Right, you lot, and yes, I still have a football channel. Right, we're going to forget about last season, alright? We're forgetting about that. Make any content. But I'm back this season because I'm so excited for this league, actually, this year. I feel like this year, we've really seen the big, best teams really go to another level based off who they brought in the transfer market, and we've seen the lower relegation candidates really give it a good go in the transfer market, and some of the mid-table teams have got way worse, so I think it will be more competitive this year. I'm really hoping. But anyway, now I'm going to do what every man, woman and dog is doing around the country and giving my 20-1 Premier League predictions in front of the camera. So yeah, we're going to do that. So in 20th, I've gone for Burnley. Bloody Burnley. I'm sorry, guys. Now, some people believe that Burnley are actually going to do quite well. Maybe the best promoted team. Because whereas other relegated teams in recent seasons have come up trying to play big, expansive Pep Guardiola-like football and have been caught out in the back like 50 times a game, Burnley built their promotion on defence first. And under Scott Parker, they had an unbelievable record. They didn't concede more than a goal in a game, for God's sake, and they only conceded about 15 goals in like a 46-game season. It was unbelievable, right? The problem is they've lost key players from that defence, Riley and Trafford. Of course, the goalkeeper, who were big cogs. And also, if you look at the stats, they were very lucky. Very, very lucky at times. And I don't think they'll be able to replicate the trick. But as much as you need a solid defence, or at least a capable defence to stay up in the Premier League, you also need goals. Goals are so important. Goals win games. I sound like Michael Owen now. But they've signed Armando Broja. What is the point? Like, he'll get 2 goals max. I bet you. If he gets more than 5 goals, I'll give you all a tenner. Anyone who watches this, comment if you want it, right? They've signed Marcus Edwards, who I really wish big things for. I'm really rooting for the kid. He did okay at Sporting, but I don't see him really having the impact that some would hope. And they brought Carl Walker in. And Walker by name and nature these days. I mean, yes, he's good for leadership, but is he really the kind of character, when you see the things you see in papers about him, that you really want around your club for an experience, all these young players they've got? I wouldn't want him, so I think it's going to be a bit like John Terry at QPR. It's just going to be a bit sad to see a once great just kind of embarrassing himself in a bottom place Premier League finish, unfortunately. Okay, 19th, I'm going for Sunderland. I really want Sunderland to stay up. I would love Sunderland to take the place of one of those boring teams in the mid-table. But the reality is, I think they are going straight back down. They've really given it a good go, to be fair to them. Like, a lot of unknown quantities. It's very hard to judge their transfer window because I'm not going to pretend that I know who all these players are. I know there's that Diarra, who looks really exciting. And of course, they brought in a centre-back who I've heard good things about. But I can't tell you much about any of these players. But minus, of course, Granit Xhaka, who I think will be a big part of them if they are to stay up. That experience he brings. And I think they will be really fun to watch. They may beat a big 6 team. My money's on Man United. But I think they won't get enough points and lack the cohesion. And they have a manager who's unproven at this level as well. Okay, 18th, West Ham. Okay, I like to throw a few curveballs in there, because if you would have told me last season that Man United and Spurs would be 15th and 17th, and Nottingham Forest would almost get the Champions League, I would have said you were mental. So there's always some things that we just can't fathom at the start of the season could ever be a possibility, and then they just happen, and we just kind of all go along. But no one's too big to go down, and this is what people were trying to say about Everton a few years ago, but Everton are on the up now. And I think West Ham are going to be this season's really slump. I don't rate Graham Potter at this club. I think more and more we're seeing how the Brighton model and the running of that club really helped his career, because at big clubs we've seen him flop twice now, and I just can't see it working out. I think he has no idea what his best team is. I think his tactics are all over the place. I don't think he can get the best out of anything, because I think his defence is really poor. I think they've got players on big wages who really shouldn't. They probably got rid of Danny Ings now, but like the fact Danny Ings was there on so much money is ridiculous. They brought in Todibo for big money. He didn't really do it last season. Could he do it? You got Somerville. Hasn't really shown what people expected him to show at this level. There's a lot of players there, even someone like Edson Alvarez, who's just spent more time getting sent off and putting in good performances. Some of their best player last season was Aaron Wan-Bissaka, that reject right back at Man United. They brought in Diop at left back. I think he will be one of the standouts in this relegated team and will be someone going to a big club. He'll be the Liam Delap of this team, I'll tell you for free. Yes, they had Bowen, but Leicester went down with Maddison and Barnes and Tielemans, who are all players you could argue who are just as good as Bowen. Paqueta flopped last season, wasn't great. There's a lot going over him, like the gambling charges. I don't know if he'll get banned. It's hard to judge on that sort of thing, but I don't think he'll be enough. And I'm not impressed by their summer arrivals. Callum Wilson on a free, he'll get 5 goals max. He can't stay fit. I don't rate it. But they could do something in the last few weeks to really surprise people. This is the problem with doing this video so early, is that the window shuts after the season starts and we don't know what big moves could happen or what key players could leave or join other clubs. So I'm just kind of doing it based on what I think will happen. I think Bowen will do his best, but unfortunately I think this will be a shock relegation. 17th I'm going for Leeds. I know it's on Mendes, but Leeds above West Ham. Now, a lot of people will immediately say that Daniel Farke is not ready at this level. I don't think Farke, he's either solid and actually proves people wrong, like Marco Silva, or he gets binned by September. They've already shown that they want to get rid of him, so I don't see why they wouldn't just sack him if he's doing bad early on. They're not going to do a Van Nistelrooy and hold him for way longer than he deserves just based off his name. That's not going to happen. Daniel Farke will be gone by September, most likely, so I don't really see that in the prediction. I think the defence is solid. They brought in some good young players, but they've also brought in experience, like Sean Longstaff. They've got the spine of players who were in the league a couple of years ago, so they have a lot more Prem experience than Burnley and Sunderland. Well, maybe not Burnley, but still got Meslier is out of goal, which is a relief for them because they probably would have beat Reading's points record last season if they had anyone else in goal. So that will be an upgrade. And I think they've gone under the radar because I think everyone's talking about the moves that Sunderland made, but they've made just as good moves, I personally think. Okay, 16th, Brentford. Now, it seems people, if they're going to say a promoted team will survive, then Brentford is the team that will take their place in the bottom. The team probably had the summer that Brentford have had. I probably would have put them to be down, but the way that this club is run, the Moneyball tactic, every good player they lose, that they manage to just like replace them with a better version. Like the scaling from Ollie Watkins to Ivan Toney to Wissa and Brian and Bomo has been crazy. And don't forget, they've got Igor Thiago. We didn't see him last season. Who knows if he's any good, but they spent big money on him. And surely he's got to be solid. Kevin Sade, of course, is, I think, really come to light and really shown himself. They've still got Damsgaard. And I think Wissa does go. They do bring in a solid replacement there. They've still kept that same defence. They've got Aaron Hickey and Rico Henry coming back. Yeah, they're a solid team. I don't understand why everyone thinks just because they've lost their key players. And, of course, the big thing is that Thomas Frank has gone to Spurs, but Keith Andrew, anything about Keith Andrew, I don't know if he's any good, but clearly he's not just got the job as a PE teacher. Like, surely they see something in him, and it worked with Frank, so give them a chance. Okay, 15th, I'm going for Bournemouth. People forget, and I think when people do these predictions, they put too much focus on who the coach is at each team, because managers come and go. You know what I mean? If the coach isn't working out, then we get sacked. But also, if the coach is doing really well, they get poached. And I think that is what could happen to Iraola. There'll be top teams who will sack their coach this season. Maybe Allegri will get sacked again at AC Milan, imagine. And I think Iraola has to be top on all these lists for manager replacements. He could replace Amarin, God forbid. So, Bournemouth have lost their entire defence pretty much this summer. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Literally. Zabani, Huijsen, Kirkez, Kepa, gone. Although Petrovic is probably a bit of an upgrade, so I don't really know. The centre-backs and Kirkez are big losses, but they've already brought in Truffet to replace Kirkez, and they've brought in a centre-back, I believe. I think they'll be fine in the end, but I don't think they'll be quite as good as they were last season. I think Iraola could leave, but I think, you know, you can't work miracles, and it will take time to get going. I think maybe next season they can kick on again. I might be totally wrong, though. It's very hard to gauge when the transfer window isn't over, and they could pull off a massive replacement with the money that they've got. I mean, they've made big money. Over 150 million. They could buy Isak. Imagine Isak at Bournemouth. Okay, 14th, I'm going for Nottingham Forest. Now, contrary to what belief may tell you, Nottingham Forest squad is actually not that big. Like, you think because they bought like 30-odd players a couple of seasons ago, they have this massive squad. They don't. They really struggled. Just in the Premier League and the Cups, they really burnt out. Nottingham Forest, like, overnight have gone from, like, kind of the darlings, like, the sweethearts of the league to just, like, villains. Like, everyone hates them because they're snitches. No one likes a snitch, so... And Mr. Mariakos just looks like a pantomime villain, doesn't he? He's just, bloody hell. They have retained Gibbs White, which is key, but I don't think it will be masters for them. I'm not blown away by some of the transfers. James McAtee, Igor Jesus, like, they don't excite me. I don't think they're quite going to make that jump to this level, unfortunately. They've lost Alanga, who I think was a key player for them, and as far as I'm aware, not really brought in a noticeable good replacement. Can Chris Wood keep putting up these big numbers? Probably not. Even though he scored the goal last season, people had to put issues with his overall play. I just think you never see these like freak acts. Like even when Leicester won the league, they got like 11th for next season. I just think they're obviously going to fall off this season. Okay, 13th, I am going for Wolves. Now, Wolves are the name that I see people putting in the relegation zone or quite low down and saying, oh, they're the worst of the established, definitely. And I think it's a bit of a lazy prediction. Maybe I'm saying this because I've done this like 4 years and I put Wolves go down almost every year and they never do, so I'm going to learn from my mistake. Mateus Cunha and Ait Nouri have left, and people see them as big losses, and yes, they are going to have impact, but they brought in this guy called Wolf at left back, and I mean, I don't know if he's any good, but the fact he's called Wolf, I just hope he's good, you know what I mean? And Cunha, they were fine without him last season. I think having that kind of bad apple, bad attitude player in the dressing room could have been more bad long term. They've lost Semedo in midfield, but they still have that amazing Al Gomez and Andre double act in midfield, which I think are one of the best in mid-table. And Vitor Pereira was just... I thought he was a bit of a journeyman coach who was just coming in for a payday and was probably going to get them relegated. But he really proved me wrong and made them quite hard to beat and interesting to watch. And I think that they will be a solid mid-table. Absolutely fine. Nothing to worry about. 12th, I'm going for Crystal Palace. If you don't... There's only one certainty in this league. It used to be that City would win it, but they're kind of a bit dodgy at the minute. And the other certainty is that Crystal Palace get 12th. Now, the big contention points are, will Eze and Mark Gahey still be there on the 1st of September? And if they're not there, that will have an impact. I think Gahey will go to Liverpool. I think that seems pretty linked on. I think for all parties that kind of actually works because they've lost half the transfer fee they would have got last year, but they've won an FA Cup in that time and a Community Shield now. So I think you would have took that as a Palace fan. They've not really brought anyone in. They've got a pretty solid squad. I think, you know, someone like Chet Decore, who we didn't really see last season, if he can come back, he's a proper good defensive midfielder, mind. Sir is still providing the goals and works really well under Glasner. And I think Eze does stay in the end. I think he does give them one more season. And I think, you know, having Europe, they may struggle a bit, but I don't think it will impact their form too much. I don't think they'll, you know, the Conference League isn't the Europa League, and they can rotate a bit more and probably still go quite far in it. I mean, but Glasner also, he's someone who could definitely be poached, because I think he's going to be the next Bayern Munich manager, my personal opinion. So, okay, 11th, I'm going for Everton. Everton had a bit of a disaster to the start of their transfer window, and I thought, could they actually go down in their new stadium, which would have been really funny, but no, I think when you look at it, most of the players, they lost a lot of players, but a lot of them, minus maybe Decore, but even he was on big wages and he wasn't getting any younger. You know, they finally got DCL off the books and some fringe players which needed to go. But they had a very small squad. But you know what? Their transfer window has actually been really good. Like, Thierry is going to be really scary. And having him and Beto is really solid depth. They brought in Jack Grealish, who maybe he'll be a big money flop, but, well, he's not big money, but big wages. But I actually think he'll be quite exciting. And if he can even be a fraction of what he was in his first 2 seasons at City or his time at Villa, he will be really solid for them. And they brought in Dewsbury Hall in midfield, and I actually really like that because I think Dewsbury Hall is a solid mid-table player who, if he's getting a run of games, he'll be good for them. That defence is still solid, and I just think having Moyes, that good factor, and, you know, having the new stadium, I think they'll do well, and they could push for Europe. My only hesitance with them is that I don't know if they have quite the squad depth as other teams, and I think there's a few teams that are better. 10th, I'm going for Fulham. Now, a lot of people seem to think that Fulham are going to struggle just because they haven't bought anybody, but I think we need to look at Liverpool last season. Just because you don't have an expensive transfer window doesn't mean it's not a good one, because Fulham have kept hold of everybody. No one's gone out the door yet. They haven't sold a player. They haven't bought anyone bar, I think, a backup goalkeeper for Leno, who's not going to get any minutes. I think that's a good thing. Marco Silva's built like this weird team with like rejects, and he's just like kind of transformed them to all being really good players. They've got like the best left back in the league probably, and Robinson still there, who, you know, Aït-Nouri, Kirkhez, big left backs went, but Robinson, they've kept on to him, which is really important. You know, I do worry maybe about their goals. Will Raul Jimenez be successful for much longer? If I have to watch Adama Traore, like, for one more season, it's going to be a nightmare. But, no, I think they'll be solid. I think Marco Silva just makes these players overperform to a big degree. And they've shown they can really go toe-to-toe with the big teams. Okay, 9th, I'm going for Spurs. Oh my god, the Super Cup final was so funny, man. It was the most typical Tottenham performance I've ever watched. Now, I actually really like Thomas Frank. He's someone that I wouldn't have minded replacing Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. That's how highly I rated him. But the thing is, right, in your first season at a club, the expectation is quite low. Especially when you had such a bad season the previous one, you know what I mean? You can't really moan at Frank if he does any better than 17th. 17th, I still can't get over it, man. I think this will be a slow and kind of a season of learning. I think their transfer window hasn't been great. They brought in Paulinho in midfield, who, yes, he was really great at Fulham, but at Bayern he was an injury-riddled, really, like, old mess, and I just, you know, to have that move collapse, would he be the same player? It's a risk. Kudos, I think, will be solid, but I don't think he'll be unbelievable. There's talk of, like, Savinho coming in. I don't see, like, Savinho having the end product really keeps on in. I think they've got a lot of really good attackers, but they don't really have that one. You know what I mean? The way that Chelsea have Cole Palmer, or Liverpool have Salah, or City have Haaland, or Arsenal have Saka. Like, they don't have that. That player was Son, but he's got old and he's left now. You know, could that be Tell? Could he be that different maker? Possibly, but it's early to say. You know, Kulusevski, you might argue, because he had a really solid season. He actually stood out last season. I don't rate the midfield. Perhaps Basuma needs to get in a bin, with the greatest respect. Well, Basuma's a pretty questionable person in real life, actually, so no love lost there. But I don't know, I think there's some holes in that team. I think they've got two centre-backs who cannot survive a season without getting an injury. Similarly with the full-backs. Maybe that was just Ange, or maybe they'll actually stay fit under Frank. I think they'll be harder to beat, but they won't be as fun. But I think it'll be a steady season. But I think, you know, Arteta and Klopp in their first season only were able to get 8th. I mean, Arteta was 8th twice. It takes time. And I don't think Frank overnight is going to transform these guys. So I'm putting them 9th. Okay, 8th, I'm going for Brighton. And I wanted to put Brighton higher. And I debated saying, could they get 6th or 7th? And I think they are going to be my kind of surprise package this year that could kind of push on. Brighton have some unbelievable depth, man. Like, they have a lot of players. Everyone talks about Chelsea, but I'd argue Brighton probably have the biggest squad in the league when it just comes to the sheer volume. And whereas other mid-table teams have lost key players and not really replaced them to a good degree, Brighton have arguably like not really had that big losses. Because the player they've lost, they kind of wanted to go, right? When you look at João Pedro, people say it's a big loss. He wasn't starting for Brighton. They kind of had some issues there. And they still have Ruta, who I think could have a really big season. And Danny Welbeck, of course, is still kicking about. And they brought in 2 new Greek strikers who could hit. Lost Estupiñán. Okay, they brought in a younger De Kuyper. The big one for Brighton is, can they hold on to Baleba? Because if they lose Baleba to Man United, that is kind of the big name, the kind of the jewel in the crown for Brighton, and he's unbelievable. And if he goes to Man United for a big fee, will they have time to really bring in a replacement? They probably will with Brighton, but I'd worry about them, and that's the only thing that's stopping me from saying, yeah, they're going to get the Europa League. Like, Matt O'Reilly is a player that I think could be really great for them. They've kept Minted. Like, they have big depth. They kept Matoma as well. But if Baleba stays, I think they could be top 6 banned, but I'm putting them 8th just to be safe. Okay, 7th is Newcastle. I kind of feel bad for Newcastle, but they kind of remind me of myself, you know, getting like rejected 50 times. It's like my school experience. The window actually hasn't been that bad. Like, people overreact about it. They've still got that really solid midfield and defence that they kept. They pretty much kept everyone. Isak seems that there's no way back. Whether he goes to Liverpool, trains in the reserves, or goes on loan to Saudi Arabia or Turkey, it seems there's no way he's going to play for Newcastle this season. But if they bring in Jan Wisser, that's a solid replacement, and another striker possibly. I know they've had a lot of rejections, but they have brought in Alanga, who I think will be really good in Eddie Howe's system and fits them really well. They brought in another centre-back, which they desperately need depth there. You know, they have got better, but I think the only issue, the reason I'm putting them lower is because of that loss of Isak, the amount of goals. And also, I think the Geordies are really, they're really upset at the minute. And, you know, that they're really unjust, moaning about PSR and stuff, even though Isak is not a PSR issue. And they've got the money to spend, they're just trying to fish in the big ponds, you know what I mean? They're not used to it. So, I think the morale and the moaning of Geordie, I think if they have a bad start and they have a few hard games early on, I think they could have a less season. Okay, 6th, I am going for Aston Villa. Everyone seems to think Villa fall off this season just because they haven't brought anyone in. It's kind of the Fulham thing again. There's talk of Asensio coming in again, and if Asensio does come back, I mean, what a signing that is to get him permanently out. You know, people say, oh, it's a lot of money. No, they're here and now. They want to win something. They want to win that Europa League, and it's what Unai Emery does. Apart from at Arsenal, he didn't do it there. They've got rid of Ramsey, but I don't really think that's a big enough. They kept hold of Ollie Watkins. It seems they want to sell Watkins. Kept Yuri Tielemans. They've got a lot of depth, Villa, actually. They've got a bigger squad and a better squad, I think, on paper than Newcastle. Like, Newcastle may have a better starting 11, but Villa have a lot more options, and people seem to want to let off a lot of the time. And I think they're more equipped for something like the Europa League, which I think they had Champions League last season, went quite far in that, and still were able to do solid in the league. So I think they'll be absolutely fine, Villa, and they'll be right at it again, but not quite Champions League. Okay, 5th, Man United. Man United are very hard to predict, but I think people are kind of forgetting that, you know, this is Manchester United we're talking about. No. Ten Hag got like 3rd out of nowhere, the team coming from 7th, and I know they were 15th last season, but Amarin's got no real excuses, you know what I mean? I really don't like Amarin as a coach. I really don't think you should hire a manager who's only got one style of football, and that style requires a certain system, and he won't adapt his system at all to fit what he's got in the time being. He's so stubborn, he's got to play that way, even though Luke Shaw cannot play in his system. And he's making Bruno Fernandes, you know, worse, you know, who was their star player. But he has brought in a whole new front three who all look quite exciting. Will they gel? Cunha and Mboma have to succeed, right? Like, it's Premier League proven. And the talk of Baleba really makes it exciting for me. I think they probably do land that deal in the end. And it might be like an Anthony film. They spend stupid money on him. But I think there's no way Baleba flops. I think it'd be a revelation and exactly what they need in that midfield. I mean, Baleba, Mainu is scary. And if they get Donnarumma in goal, which seems to be the way it's going, and cut their losses with Onana, then I think they'll be solid. They had a good defence, Man United. Like, the defence was fine. It was scoring goals because Rasmus Højlund, like, just can't hit anything. I think they'll be good this season, believe it or not. And I think people are just like, have, you know, the Man United agenda. This is coming from a Liverpool supporter, all of this. Okay, 4th, I'm going for Chelsea. Chelsea, like, they played a blinder. I think people will say that Liverpool have had the best transfer window. They probably have, but Chelsea are strong second place because the money they have made on absolute rubbish is fantastic. Like, they've sold Dewsbury Hall for like 30 million, more than they bought them for, I believe, which I think would be good for Everton, but still for them that's believable. Joao Felix is a money laundering scheme, I'm convinced of it. Also got rid of Madueke for like 50, 60 mil to Arsenal, which is brilliant. They've got rid of Deadwood. They still have a lot of squad depth. And that 11, you're starting to see this Todd Bowley, Clear Lake project come together, and you're starting to see the team build, you know. I think João Pedro and Lindelof are great additions that can definitely provide the goal and can take pressure off Cole Palmer, who's doing a lot. They are a bit weak on the wings though. Is getting better than Madueke. I don't know. They've lost Sancho as well, who I think would have been a decent rotation option if he actually would have wanted lower wages. God, don't get me started on Jadon Sancho. But yeah, the only way for them is in defence because Robert Sanchez is still the goalkeeper. You cannot win the Premier League with a poor goalkeeper. There is no way Robert Sanchez will win the Premier League. And also, centre-backs and defence, you know, as good as the midfield is, Colwell's gone down with an ACL, and I don't rate him too highly anyway. Is Disasi still on the books? No, I think you don't know if players like Lavia will stay fit for the whole season. Same with Fofana, they seem to not be able to, so... But I think they win a trophy this year. I think they win like the FA Cup or something this year, Chelsea. Okay, third, I'm going for Manchester City. I have flip-flopped between these top three because I think this is one of the most open titles. And I know we see this most year and someone runs away with it, but I think genuinely all three of these have a contender. And Man City, I've really struggled with them. I think they're the team I know the least about because you see Pep and he doesn't look 100% happy. He's looking burnt out. He's talking about his future and retiring. I don't know if he goes past this season. But at the same time, Pep Guardiola never has 2 bad seasons on the trot. And it will be very unlikely, you know, if he doesn't win something this year. Maybe that's the Champions League instead or something. But the problem I have with City is that, similar to Liverpool, they brought in a lot of new players. And you don't really know how the system's going to fall. I think Nuri could be a bit of a liability defensively. I think he'll be a good player. But I think that will be the issue for them this season. Rodri is also injured again. Can they rely on him? They've lost Kevin De Bruyne. You know, Bernardo Silva gone on there. It's really a new generation. And there's some really exciting players. I think Cherki will be fantastic. I think if they can get Foden playing to half the ability of 2 seasons ago, it would be fantastic. Haaland is almost a guarantee of goals, obviously. And I really like Reinders. I think he's gone under the radar, but he'll be one of the top 3 signs of the season for me. I think he'll be absolutely incredible for them. That right back is still a gaping hole. You know, Mateus Nunes can do the job there, but he's not. You don't want him there. It would have been great if they could get Livramento. I don't think they will. But there is talk of them bringing in Rodrigo. And if that happens, you might as well forget the league. But I don't think that deal happens. I don't think it's realistic. He's been linked to a lot of teams, Rodrigo, and it seems it won't happen this summer at least. Okay, second, I'm going for Liverpool. Okay, part of this maybe is not to like jinx it and look bad if they don't win. I think Liverpool, and there's been a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. Like everyone's like, oh, they're going to walk the league. They built the league and they flop in the Community Shield. And it's like, oh, no, that they've got holes everywhere. The flip-flop is hilarious. But Liverpool, I think, have less depth than Arsenal. Obviously, Arsenal are number 1, if you haven't worked that out. Their signings have been incredible. Like, to get Florian Wirtz, it's the kind of signing you didn't see Liverpool make historically. But to bring in a world-class player who will probably be, like, one of the key players for them for like the next 6 to 8 years, possibly, is fantastic. I think Ekitike maybe won't have the end product of the goals, but when it comes to, you know, providing and creating, I think he'll have really good link-up with Salah and Gakpo and Wirtz, and I think that kind of attacking will really work. The fullbacks I'm caught in 2 minds about. I think Frimpong and Kirkes are very exciting at bombing forward. They're kind of giving that early days Klopp, Robertson and Trent, but they might have signed the only right-back who was worse defensively than Trent, which is quite impressive. And Kirkes is more known for his attack than his defence. I think there are holes there. Luckily, it seems they are going to bring in this Leone and Mark Gahey as centre-back options, which is desperately needed. I'd worry about the attack. Of course, Isak, I don't think Isak happens in the end. I just think Newcastle have traded. I bet I'll post this and it will find out that Newcastle have agreed a 130 million offer or something. But of course, this summer we did see the tragic loss of Diogo Jota, which was one of the most heartbreaking moments where we saw the whole community just like come together and just in shock. And it's amazing to see the way the football has actually reacted to this and all the tributes and everything. But he is, of course, a loss because of his versatility that he had for the team. Nunes and Diaz have also been sold. That's 3 attackers, and all they brought in so far is Ekitike. I know Rio and Gamoa is very exciting, and if Isak does come in, maybe to some of the worries, but it's hard to gauge. And I think it's very hard to retain the title. And I think because there's so many new players, and I know Slot did this at the second season at final order, maybe I'm just being a bit cautious, but I'm a little bit worried. But I think number one, and it is their time, Arsenal. Arsenal have to win the league this year. And Arsenal fans will come out and say, when they don't, and if Liverpool do it, that they bought the league and that you can't compete, or bring out that Klopp quote or something, or it'll be the PGMOL fault or something like that. But Arteta, I mean, he's done a 3-peat at second places, which is quite impressive. I think Wenger did that as well, and he actually won it in the fourth. So, fourth time the charm, phase 7 of the Arteta plan, it's got to happen this year. For years, all I've heard is that Arsenal need a striker. It's the lazy pundit line that every pundit has said. If Arsenal get a striker, they win the Premier League, and then they bring one in, and people will still complain that he's not good enough. But Gyökeres, I think, he's just a target man, you know what I mean? He's not the most technical player. He's kind of got a Haaland vibe to him, but he's a goal scorer. And yes, a lot of his goals on the counter, but I'm sure Arteta can adapt this guy. I think, yes, he couldn't get in the Brighton team in the Prem, and yes, the Portuguese league, but I think he'll be solid. I think 15 goals in the Premier League. Saka, if he can stay fit the whole season, will be big. But the big weakness is that left wing. No way Madueke should be the left winger. And Martinelli and Trossard, the whole left-hand side has been the weakness for Arsenal, and this has been the thing. But I think it does come together. I think Skelly and Madueke might have kind of a good link-up. But the big one for me is actually Zubimendi. I think a lot of people, because it was been like a done deal, have forgot about him. I think he's a potential world-class player. I think he might end up being better than Rodri. Honestly, I think that he will be the difference maker, will definitely have a spot in the team this season, and I think he will haunt Liverpool, because of course they tried to get him the season before he stayed at Sociedad. Arsenal have the best defence in the league, undoubtedly. Midfield, you know, is pretty close between them, Liverpool and City now. Maybe not City. Chelsea probably over City midfield-wise. And when it comes to attack, I think they've got a lot more options than Liverpool. People laugh at someone like Kai Havertz, but he does provide good link-up play, and he does offer a lot in Arteta's system. And Marino can do a job. Gabriel Jesus is still about. Martinelli, Trossard, Madueke, Saka, Wanyeri. Like, that is so many names. And I just think that squad depth, and finding out that striker, and binning off Thomas Partey and Jorginho, and bringing in a proper partner for Rice, and giving that license to go forward. This is the year for Arsenal to go out and make that statement and prove that they can actually cross that barrier and win the Premier League. And that is why I think they're going to be the champions this season. I'm going to see you lot soon.